MiniWarGaming rules you got wrong.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this week's Rules You Got Wrong 40K edition. I will be starting our show off this week. Remember, this show is the show where we respond to your comments about rules that you think that we got wrong, and we discuss whether you're right or whether we're right. And then hopefully we all learn more about the rules. And so I'm going to be starting with my Beat Map Bat Reps episode 3 and 4. And then you'll be hearing at least from Quirk. I think that'll be it for this week. But before we get into that, Tyranids vs. Iron Hands Warhammer 40K Battle Report Beat Map Bat Rep episode 3. Data Wargaming said, this is your 4,000th video, which is absolutely true. It was our 4,000th, I don't know how to say that. It was the number 4,000 on the list of videos that went up on our YouTube channel. So that was a pretty big deal. It's 4,000 videos. And then the vault has, I don't know how many, 3,000 or 4,000 as well. So I wonder how many more or how much longer before we hit to our total of 10,000 videos. It'd be kind of cool. Also, I got to point out a comment, Bo Pitt. I hate to play against Matt. I'm assuming you would say I would hate to play against Matt, because I don't think we've ever played. He looks way too deep into the rules and takes all common sense out of the house rules he makes. Well, thanks for the nice comment. I think I try my hardest to actually put common sense into the rules. I'm more a rules as intended kind of guy. And the problem with any rule set, but particularly Warhammer 40Ks, is that unfortunately there's a lot of common sense just lacking from the rules. And because we have so many viewers, we have to come up with some sort of set of whatever might make sense. Especially the new FAQ that is still in draft format that needs its own FAQ. So they can't even write an FAQ properly without it raising even more questions. And so we just do the best we can, Bo Pitt. So let's actually get into some of the rules comments for that battle report. Kingsnake 1986, don't forget Matt, Tyranid Rippers are fearless. That's true, I absolutely did forget that, and I think I had them run away, or something like that. Cloudy Day 123, doesn't the Shield Eternal grant Adamantium Will, giving the Chapter Master +1 to deny the Witch? So that 5 would have been a 6, stopping the horror. That is actually true as well, so those Grav Centurions would have been even more powerful in that game. Now he ended up firing them at the Flying Hive Tyrant anyway. Maybe he would have chosen a different target, but honestly that would have probably been the best target for them anyways, because of how devastating they would end up being. Fine Slow. If you read the Grav Amp rule carefully, it says you may reroll the result singular. The result singular is all the dice. Compare with being able to reroll a psychic test. Additionally, compare with Shred, which says you must reroll the failures. Why would you choose not to reroll Grav if you could only reroll the failures? So that's a good one. I'm curious. I actually, that's the one I looked up everything else today I was actually having questions with, and I want to look that up. Grav Cannon. So let's look up Grav Amp. No, actually, what I want to look up is order of operation, because one person pointed out is that when you're actually rolling your 2 wounds or your results, you're doing them one at a time, technically anyways. And we just, for ease of speeding up the game, we roll them all at once. So I want to see if that's actually the case. So that was the one thing I was going to look up that I forgot to do before the show, so I apologize. So we look up the shooting phase, and we look at the true order of operations. So we have, when we look at the nominate unit to shoot, choose a target, select a weapon. So we select the Grav Cannon with Grav Amps. We roll to hit, roll a d6 for each shot fired. And then number 5, roll to wound. For each shot that hit, roll again to see if it wounds the target. The result needed is determined by comparing whatever. Allocate wounds, so we actually allocate wounds after, which actually creates a problem with a lot of rules like Monster Hunter with multiple things, but the new FAQ is starting to resolve that. And then after firing that weapon, you move on. So let's look at the more detailed. Which models can fire, roll to hit, and then roll to wound. To determine whether a hit causes a telling amount of damage, you can normally compare it to strength and toughness. We know that that's not the case. The wound pool. So the wound pool is totaled up after the number of wounds. So you could actually be right. It seems kind of strange that you would re-roll everything, but that's not the first power to do that. I know Fate Weaver had like a back in time kind of thing, but it's weird that Grav Amp, it's not a time thing. Like the re-rolling all to hits was that he actually could change time, and so that makes sense to go back and re-roll everything. So it's hard to believe that their intent was that you only do it once. But if we look at pure raw, and roll to hit, then I think you might be right. So the problem is it doesn't ever make an allocation. Like when it starts to talk about pools, that's actually, that's only after you've wounded. So I don't know. I think we're going to continue playing it the way we do, both when I'm playing Space Marines and playing against Space Marines, because it's just, I totally get your point, and you could totally argue it rules as written, and it should actually be in the FAQ to see if that's actually the case, although I'm guessing, I don't think it was in the FAQ. And so that can lead people to think, well, then obviously it's this way. That's the problem, is that a lot of times it's not so obvious when we have interaction with so many different things. And you can argue the wording for sure, how Shred specifies rerolling failed, but the problem is, once again, that Games Workshop is not very precise with their wording. So that's a hard argument to always make, but it can totally win you the argument for rules as written. But I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. So I'm up in the air about that one, so we'll see. Next, Fine Slow. Again, at 2747, you said you were not using new FAQ. That's true, which meant that the plasma gun would only get hot with a 1 reroll to a 1. This is stated under the Gets Hot special rule with Gets Hot and rerolls. It states a wound is only suffered if the 2-hit reroll is also a 1. So what you're saying is that if I rolled a 2 to hit and that failed, and I rerolled that to a 1, then it does not get hot. And I can see why you'd say that, because it uses the word also. But once again, that seems strange. The new FAQ changes this, but you said you weren't playing with this. So I guess we were already incorporating that as a house rule, but we weren't even really thinking about it. It just seemed that you got to re-roll your results, and if you ended up with any 1s, because re-rolls, like the beginning of the book actually covers how re-rolls work, and with the re-roll, you totally disregard the first roll. So if you get a re-roll of any sort, then when you do it, the first result is obliterated, it's gone, and you take the results of the second roll. And so that would seem to tell you that Gets Hot gets 1. Now I know that specific overrides general, and so you could argue that because it uses the word also, that that's overriding how the reroll works, so I can see that. So, and the new FAQ clarifies that, so it's hard to say. It just seems like the way that it was always, but you're the first person to bring that one up, like ever. And so I think most people play it that way, but that doesn't mean it's right, of course. As you know, you have to, just because most people do something wrong doesn't all of a sudden make it right. So, but yeah, that one I can see the argument there as well. Valor calls 1 at 49 minutes, a Termagant Hormagant multi-charge. Don't you lose Furious Charge if you multi-assault? Yes, absolutely. I did that wrong. Azek Arman, you should have deep struck your spores on turn 1, as you are not prevented from bringing the ongoing reserves on turn 1. I tried to, actually, and it's actually the way those work is they deep strike after deployment, and they mishapped and went into ongoing reserve. So that's why they came in later on, although I did bring them in turn 1. Oh no, I think they did come in turn 1, did they not? Maybe I just forgot until turn 2. Bloodshot VX, aren't Hurricane Bolters twin linked? Yes, they are. We made that mistake at first, and I think we corrected it later on. Valor calls, Aaron and Matt, Iron Hand Chapter Tactics also give characters that will not die. So the Chapter Master would have had it will not die, or, yeah, this one had a Chapter Master. Yeah, and the Chaplains as well. So we did forget that. Lockdar, not that it made much of a difference in the end, but Hive Tyrant would only had a 4+ Jink from Grav Centurions, as the Omniscope gives night vision as well as split fire. That is true. Also, Orbital Strike is ordnance, so can't move and fire it. That is also true. Smithus, the only thing that always hurts me watching Matt is that he never measures distances while moving and running, etc. And please don't tell me this sometimes not giving any advantage. Actually, I always do. I just do it off camera because I'm holding the camera with my one hand, and so I measure it, and I make note of like a blemish or just a line that's on the mat or on the terrain, and then I move my models up to that. Is it 100% accurate? I'm sure it's off by a little bit, but trust me, I've watched plenty of people put their measuring tape out and then get way off. It's never a perfect art. But no, I definitely do measure. Miss Creepy Chan, don't units with slow and purposeful automatically pass pinning checks? No, absolutely not. Slow and purposeful prevents you from running and overwatching, and then gives you the relentless special rule. That's all it does. It doesn't give anything else. Grand Sharks, and they shall know no fear ignores pinning? Everybody really wants to ignore pinning for the Space Marines. The Space Marines don't ignore pinning unless they have a chaplain with them that makes them fearless, or they're fearless from some other rule. And so no, and they shall know no fear. Now somebody later on asks, Crazy Khajiit, so obviously a Elder Scrolls player, can someone explain how they shall know no fear works? This description confuses me. I need a simple version. It's actually pretty simple. First off, they ignore fear tests, and they shall know no fear. Second off, they regroup automatically. So they still have to take morale and pinning, and not fear tests, obviously, but then and other leadership tests. But when it comes to their turn, they regroup automatically. But not only do they regroup automatically, but they get to act as if they weren't falling back to begin with. Because normally if something regroups, it can move up to 3 inches, and then it can't run or charge, and it has to snap fire. But Space Marines, they don't take that 3-inch move. They just simply, wherever they were, they just can act as normal from that point on. But until that moment, they still count as or falling back for any purposes of anything else. Also, if you're in close combat and they lose the combat and fail the morale test, if they fail the initiative roll-off to see if they get overrun, then they actually become fearless, quasi-fearless, and they'll stick around and keep fighting, so you can't overrun them. So that's what And They Shall Know No Fear does. Wim at 40-45, Razorbacks have side armor 11. You're correct. I think I treated it as a 10. Ben the Toastman, around the 26-35 mark, he said 4 bolters, not including the chaplain, because they get to re-roll everything, but it actually makes no difference. If you read the rules for doctrines closely, it says that any independent characters joined to insert doctrine type here count as one of them. So chaplain and a tactical squad will get to re-roll everything if with the tactical squad when the tactical doctrine is called. You're absolutely right. We just got that wrong. Bendover 988, would the Trigon reduce the scatter and stay on the table? No, it's like a drop pod where the only way he can mishap is by scattering off the table. If he scatters onto impassable or onto models, then he reduces the scatter, but not for going off the table. Wim at 3410, the Tactical Marine would not have gotten rerolls to hit when firing the frag missile. Only blast weapons with Twin Link special rule get to reroll misses. You're right and wrong. You're right in the sense that the new FAQ does clarify that that is the case, but there was a big debate over whether rerolling ones allows you to reroll blasts, and at first I was against it, and then later on we chose to align with that. I think ITC FAQ said that you could, and so we decided to go with it, and the majority of people wanted it as well. The new FAQ that's out is now it specifies that you have to be able to reroll everything in order to get that, and not just ones. And so you're right in the new FAQ, but with the old FAQ it was highly contested. And there was some really good arguments both for and against it. Cerebro 911, Omniscope is split fire on the model, not unit. Only the Centurion's Sergeant gets to fire at a different target. I see people get this wrong all the time. That is incorrect. Omniscope gives split fire to the Sergeant. That is correct. But the split fire rule says if a unit containing one or more models with split fire, or if a unit contains one or more models with split fire, then one model can fire at another target. It does not specify that it's the model. You have to remember that most of the universal special rules will specify if it's a unit containing a model with this rule, in which case one guy getting it grants it to everybody, like stealth or shrouded or split fire. Or it might say a model with this special rule has this, in which case it does not grant it to the rest of the unit if only one model has it. For example, I'm trying to think of one. No, the most of them I'm thinking of actually is the unit that contains the model. But I'm sure there's tons of them if I just looked it up. But they do have that wording difference right there. So Omniscope grants split fire to the Sergeant. A unit containing a model with split fire, one of the models can fire at something else. Now that model has to do it first, and then the rest of the unit has to fire at something else, unless you choose not to split fire. But you have to declare that at the beginning of your shooting. Aaron Stinger, 5250, Biovore should take D6 hits from Sabotaged. That's right. Vincent Martin Bonnet. Also, Kingslayer is an objective that you've got to get rid of at the end of your turn. You draw it, but you can score it on the enemy turn. Both are incorrect. The card says if you have killed, I'm paraphrasing here, but the specific wording that's important, it says if you've killed the enemy warlord this or a previous turn, you get D3 victory points. Now, that's not the turn that you draw the card. There's actually tactical objectives that specifically say there's one for Iron Hands, I think it is, that says if you do not get this one by the end of your turn, then discard it. But Kingslayer says this turn. You score tactical objectives at the end of your turn, and so if this turn you killed the warlord, or previous turns you did, then you get the D3 victory points. And you cannot score it on your opponent's turn. You can score it on your opponent's turn in the sense that if you killed their warlord on their turn, then at the end of your next turn, you would score those points, but you don't get to claim the objective at that point. So that's all I've got for the Beatmap episode 3. So let's jump into the Vault Battle Report, episode 4, Tyranids versus Imperial Fists. This one didn't have as many things pointed out. Red Baron 67, shouldn't that Assault Cannon double out a Zoanthrope, in other words, instant kill? I could be wrong, but are they not toughness 3? Assault Cannons are strength 6, but Zoanthropes are toughness 4, so no. Dr. Bob, the Imperial Fist in the title made me excited for this battle report. Now I'm disappointed to see non-yellow Marines, though I have to admit they look really nice. I have always had discussions about this. The successor chapters of these chapters are more common than the regular chapters. And so, yeah, we put Imperial Fist so you know which chapter tactics we're using, rather than putting the name of some obscure chapter that somebody's made up so that you won't even know what that is. So they're still Imperial Fist. Mr. Cthulhu, about 1330, the Terminators ran. Is that an Imperial Fist thing? No. Terminators can run. They can fall back. There's nothing about Terminators that stops them from doing that. They can't sweep in advance, but... Johan, CSM, Chaos Space Marine, how could the Warriors and the Terminators hit each other on a 3+? They couldn't. That must have been a mistake. It should have been the Warriors hitting on 3+. The Terminators shouldn't hit back on a 3+. Tyranid Swarm, Matt, Tervagons spawn at the end of the phase, not after they move. You're absolutely right. I looked that up. For some reason, I thought it was the Tervagon moves and spawns, but it's actually at the end of the movement phase. Which is, in a way, it's kind of nice because I could get everything in place and then spawn. But it could also be, well, no, I think it's better than it's worse. Court ND 1980. I might be wrong, but I'm almost positive once a unit holds a fortification, another cannot be on it until the other is removed. Also, for the Fortress of Redemption. Also, I'm pretty sure you have to enter a fort through a door and not climb the walls. That is not correct. You're actually allowed to go over the walls and get on top of it. In fact, the Fortress of Redemption, if you're only allowed to go through the doors, there's only one door on the entire thing, but there are actually 4 buildings worth of things. So if you could only enter that door, you'd have to enter through the door, and then in your next turn, move over, and then your next turn, move over, and then your next turn, you could pop up. That would obviously not be the way it's supposed to be played, because that would take the entire game just to move across the fortress. So no, those ones, the battlements, they're treated like terrain, difficult terrain. If the building's unclaimed and you go on the battlement, then you get to claim the building. If the building's already claimed, then you have to enter it in order to claim it. But other than that, you can still go on top. So it does act different than vehicles. Zortak, around 25 minutes. Isn't the Dreadnought to roll a d6 to see if it gets stuck in the difficult terrain instead of rolling 2d6 to see how many inches it can move? Dreadnoughts move like infantry, so they do not roll for dangerous terrain when they go through difficult. They just roll difficult terrain tests, or rolling 3d6 if they have moved through cover. So that was correct the way we did it. That's all the questions I have, so let's move on to the next one.
This is for the Orcs versus Tau battle report. And Grinald, how are you getting a 2+? Jink is a 4, as in Ruins. They don't stack. The best you would get is a 3 up for night fighting, but the Tau battle suits have black sun filters, ignoring night fight. You are absolutely correct. I was actually mixing up rules for 40k and War Machine, where I was thinking that the effects of coming from different places would stack. And you're absolutely right, they don't stack. The best I would have gotten would have been either a 4-up cover from the Ruins or a 4-up Jink save. Next up, I've got... These are all from the same person who I don't have a name for, but the Ghost Keel overcharged its Cyclonic Ion something. They used a large blast while the overcharge is actually just a blast. And this is, you're actually correct, this is actually found in the Tau Codex on page 128. Also, the drones have carbines which cause pinning, and I lost a boy from wound where they would need to take a leadership right then and there. If they happened to have been pinned, they would have failed the charge, or probably failed any charges in Overwatch. And that is for the Tau Carbine rule, also on page 128 in the Tau Codex. Ghost Keels and Riptides cause fear as they are monstrous creatures, and the boys haven't been changed for Fearless. Again, you're absolutely correct. I forgot that both the Ghost Keel and the Riptide were monstrous creatures, so I wasn't taking those fear checks. A Riptide is not fearless. Monstrous creatures profile do not give, and there's nothing in the Codex for it. Again, you're absolutely correct. I was thinking that the Ghost Keel would have been fearless because it is a monstrous creature, but that's incorrect. Sniper teams have stealth, which would have given them a 3+ cover. We were treating it as a 4+, I believe, and that's on page 99 in the Tau Codex. Pulse carbines are assault 2. You are correct. That was, I don't remember what we were doing. I think we were treating them as just assault 1 there. The drones with the squad of 2, meaning, the drone was a squad of 2, meaning that it would have regrouped at full leadership. so they wouldn't have had the whole lower than and having to regroup on double ones. And this one is that they couldn't tell, but they think the drones would have moved on the objectives, have gotten supremacy, but the drones are not a scoring unit. That's the Tau Codex states that a squad entirely of drones is not scoring. Again, you're absolutely correct. That's on page 120 of the Tau Codex. Also, for turn 1, when there was night fighting, I was using a 6-up cover save. Shouldn't have gotten that because the Tau battlesuits have a black sun filter, which ignore that, and that's from Michael Brown 92. Lastly, we have the Evil Monk. You are prohibited from flatting out after you have disembarked a transported from a unit. You're half right on that one. If a vehicle hasn't moved yet and the unit disembarks, the vehicle can act as normal. If the vehicle has moved and then the unit disembarks, then it can't flat out. Now, I'm pretty sure in the game, though, we did have him move up the 6 inches, they disembarked, and then he flatted out, so we did do that incorrectly.
Thanks for watching this episode of Rules You Got Wrong. Remember, if you want to leave rules, issues, or errors that you think, things that you think we got wrong, first check to see that nobody else has already done it. Then if you can, include a timestamp like 2654 with a colon in between so that we can quickly look up, because I actually use those a lot to remind myself of what happened in those. And we'd love to hear from you, of course. And if you think any of my rules interpretations are wrong, feel free to reply right here. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for next week's Rules You Got Wrong, and happy wargaming.